Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 15th, 2014 Public Works Committee meeting. I just want to start off by reminding everybody that if you have a cell phone, please turn it to the off position or vibrate. And if you need to make a phone call or take a phone call, would you go in, take it out into the hallway, please. Next we have, thank you, Joel. Next item we have is to have a roll call and determination of quorum. Brenda, please.
Estes. Nordstrom.
Here.
Roberts. Scott. Wright. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda or make additions to or changes to the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Motion made and a second to adopt the agenda. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at this meeting on any issue that is not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the aldermen present. And I don't have anything here as far as a general public comment. So now the chair will entertain public comments on items 1 through 22. Items 1 through 22, and I have, is it item 14? Is that what you're referring to, Don? Is that item number 14? Would you like to speak on that now? If you would care to use the podium.
Chairman, if it's all right, I'd like to speak when the item comes up. I anticipate I'd be speaking against as a rebuttal, and so far there's not been an argument in favor, so I'd like to wait if I can.
Sure. Okay. Yep. If any member of the committee has a question for you on it, we'll bring that up. Okay. Very good. And so I do not have any other public speaker comment forms here on items 1 through 22. So the chair will recognize if any member of the committee to remove any items from the consent calendar. Is anyone wanting to move? Jerry Wright, Alderman Wright.
Item 14.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything from staff to pull?
I'll make a motion to approve all consent
1 through 22 with the exception of 14. Thank you. Motion by Alderman Estes, second by Alderwoman Scott to adopt the remainder of the consent items with the exception of item 14. So those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 14 is to authorize mayor and finance offices sign grant funding applications through the Transportation Alternative Program and the Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 formula for the West Memorial Park Storm Water Mitigation Project to approve the associated implementation plan for West Memorial Park and authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the associated documents if funds are awarded. And the chair will now recognize Alderman Wright.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this, and for the second, if I can make some comments afterwards.
You have your second. Alderman Wright, you have the floor.
I totally support this, and I just want the community to know that this is an overall address to issues related to parking at Legacy Park and rehabilitation of an area that's become blighted and parking lot that's in very poor repair, and a reutilization of a area for not only additional parking for the park, but it may help us in other areas of activities within our community, whether it's special events downtown, business and so forth. So I think it's a good program, and the beauty of it is we're addressing the entire corridor from Mount Rushmore to I-190, a plan that's been in the works for a long time, and I think we can see fulfillment and completion of it. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. Anyone else on the committee wish to speak to the item? Alderman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the letter that Don Frankenfeld sent a little bit earlier today, Can I ask a question of Joel Landine?
You may, Mr. Landy.
Joel, is there any legal issues to us building a parking lot in this park space?
I provide an opinion to the council. I'd rather not say anything more than that at this point. If you had additional questions, I'd be happy to talk to you about it outside the meeting.
Okay. Would you like to state your opinion, Don?
Mr. Frankfeld, if you approach the podium would you recognize yourself for the committee? And your-
I can recognize myself. That's the limit of my ability. I'm Don Frankenfeld from Rapid City, South Dakota. And presume it's okay just to talk about item 14, not only the question of Mr. Roberts, but I'll start with that question.
If you can keep your comment to the question to start with, and then we'll.
Sure, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what the protocol would be.
Yep, and then also just to help you out here, we'll keep an eye on the time frame.
I thought you might. Thank you. Joel's the lawyer. I'm not. Joel said in an earlier Public Works meeting, I think partly pimping my friend Steve McCarthy, that there are joint use facilities, of which one is at McCarthy Properties, one is at Aberesk Law Firm, and one is at Evans Orthodontics, which are parking lots that have joint use and which were not referred to the public. And I don't think I can put words in your city attorney's mouth. I'm not going to get very far. The implication, I thought, was that because we've already broken the law in this regard, we don't need to worry about the law anymore. I have sent you in my letter what the law says. The word that is the critical word, which I put in bold, is solely. Park land is to be used solely, not jointly, for park purposes. I'm drifting a little from the question.
Sorry. That's fine.
Okay.
Is that satisfactory to your question?
I'm sure we'll have more to discuss Monday night, Don. I just wanted to give you a chance to get some of your opinion out there.
Thank you.
And I was hoping to get an answer from our attorney, but I guess I have to wait until later. Thank you.
When appropriate, I would like to say a few more things. So.
Sure. We'll just stand by. And have you yielded the floor yet, Alderman Roberts?
Well, the other council members don't mind. If you have something else to say, Don, go ahead. I don't care.
If I may, I'll recognize Alderman Wright. You had your light on. It canceled. Alderman Roberts has the prerogative to ask you another question.
Well, I was just going to let you reiterate on what you just said. So if you have a few other things on your mind, go ahead.
Well, I do. Our group, Friends of Rapid City Parks, of which I'm a board member and a representative today, has opposed variations of this scheme now multiple times. It is rejected and then somehow it magically comes back to life. I believe the reason for that, well, I think there are three reasons. One reason is parking is a problem in Rapid City, and people are conscientiously trying to address that problem. Another reason is that Dan Seffner has generously agreed to provide, through Ray Hillenbrand, a very substantial contribution to make this happen. That's something to be applauded. It doesn't justify doing something that's illegal. And then the third part of the financing for this, well, there are more than one part, but there's a $500,000 grant proposed to come from the federal government for park and ride. That grant makes it crystal clear that this is not solely for park purposes. It is, I believe, principally, but you can argue about principally, it is at least in part to do what Dan proposed in the first instance when he came and talked to us, and we had Pete Lean and other business leaders talk about how desperate they were for parking, and they didn't say they didn't care about desecrating the park, they just didn't address the issue. But they are desecrating the park, they are violating the law, absent a vote,
The law says you must have a vote, and Joel may have figured out a way in talking to you privately that solely and jointly mean the same thing. I think they don't, and I think this is going to be litigated, and we'll have a chance to find out. It's a mistake to do this. The motivation is a good motivation. Dan is a good person. He's trying to do something useful. Legacy Park, on balance, I think is a lot larger than some of us thought it would be, but I think it'll be an addition to the park. I applaud most of his efforts to provide parking for Rapid City, South Dakota. The fact he's a decent guy doing a noble thing doesn't justify breaking the law. And I don't know how you or the consul on Monday night can look at the law, which says solely, very clear in the email that I sent you. The only editorial comment was to put solely in bold. I don't know how you can see solely to mean anything other than solely. That's to be used for park purposes. It's a small desecration. It is a desecration, but there are side benefits, and I agree with you that there are side benefits. That doesn't justify breaking the law. It's not that complicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. One more question. It sounded to me like what you said here is the Friends of the Park, if this gets passed, are willing to try this in court.
Well, we don't have a lot of money, but yes, we're in the process, I think, today of retaining a lawyer, first to express a legal opinion to the city council on Monday that may contradict the secret opinion Joel has offered to you, and ultimately, if necessary, to litigate this matter. The litigation would be presumably on two fronts. One is that what you're doing is illegal. Second, that you can make it legal by having a public vote. So if you agree to have a public vote, I think that takes away the legal question. But without a public vote, I don't think you can do this. So we will, our intent is to pursue it, and we do have the referendum mechanism at our disposal. It shouldn't require a referendum because this is one of those things. Jerry and I have talked about other instances of referenda lately. This is one of those things where not only may you submit this to the people, as I read the law, you must.
Thank you, Don. And I've also looked at the law a little bit on this too, and I'm not a lawyer. That's why I was hoping to get a legal opinion from Joel. So thank you. I appreciate it.
The chair would like to make a comment about attorney-client privileges. So, Don, that's the manner that I'm taking Joel's comments, not to be secretive or anything. That's just attorney-client privilege.
And forgive me, I was being deliberately sarcastic. He's a good person, he's a friend, and I appreciate that he kind of has two roles. He's got a public role and a role as your attorney. He's got to defend this in court if it gets there, so I don't hold him accountable for that.
Okay.
Although it's sort of frustrating to know what his opinion is.
Sure. Okay. That's just the chair's opinion. Okay. Is there anybody else from the committee wishing to speak at this time? If not, the chair will call for a vote. Those in favor of authorization, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We'll proceed on to item 23. So is there any public comments, first of all, before we go into item 23? Any public comments on item 23 and 24? And I do have one from Kyle Treelor. Kyle, would you like to make your presentation now? And would you like to make your presentation now? I'll just remind you have 3 minutes to, if you like to, wish to. If you'll identify yourself for the committee.
All right. I'm Kyle Treelor with Dream Design here in Rapid City.
Kyle, if you want to just get a little bit closer to the microphone or point it towards you.
There we go. Is that
Thank
better?
you. Yes.
All right. I am Kyle Treelor with Dream Design here in Rapid City, and we're representing SSST LLC, the developers of the Elks Crossing subdivision just off of Minnesota Street and Elkvale Road. Today I'm here to present the vacation of a non-access easement that we applied for earlier this spring. Essentially, we have a lot that's already platted, Lot 1 of Block 1, and that's right at the intersection of Minnesota Street, Elkville Road, and Marlin Drive. When this lot was platted, it was platted with a non-access easement that rings the full length of Elkville Road, the full length of Minnesota Street, and a portion of Marlin Drive. The lot was platted in June of 2009. Our proposed vacation area is located, as you can see on the screen, but we're approximately 200 feet north of Marlin Drive and about 330 feet from Elkville Road. We do have a median that separates the two directions of traffic on Minnesota Street in this area. Both of the intersections, Elkville Road and Minnesota Street, and the Marlin Drive, Minnesota Street, are planned as having future signals. There's essentially we have 3 points behind our reasoning in applying for this vacation. Number one, this is a master plan development that's been in the planning process for several years. This started back in 2008, probably even a little before then. All along, we've identified through this master plan, which gets submitted with each and every phase of this development, what our vision of this community looks like. And as you can see, we show a right-in, right-out access coming in off of Minnesota Street into that Lot 1 area. That has been repeatedly submitted to the city, been reviewed and approved. Second, prior to any construction on Minnesota Street or this development, one of the requirements was to have a traffic impact analysis done. That was done back in 2009 as well. It was actually commissioned in 2008, but it was put together by Fulsberg, Hulk, and Olevig. In it, they had identified the possibility of a right-in, right-out access point for both short-term and long-term future traffic. Safety concerns are addressed with the stop sign. Also, in the Rapid City Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual, minimum access approach clearances are given that basically tell you how far apart you can put accesses on any given type of street. We also meet those requirements. Once again, we're only asking for a right-in, right-out. This would be for a full access, which we would meet. In a few other areas through town, Eglin Street, where you have situations similar to this. This one's not, so it's similar, but this is up on Highway 16 and Cathedral. Basically, that's what I got for you.
Thank you, Mr. Treeler.
Thank you.
If any members of the committee have got any questions when that item comes up, please stand by.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I do not have any other speaker request forms, so we'll close public comment and move on to item number 23, which is the appeal to vacation on a non-access easement request by Dream Design International. The chair will look to the committee for a motion or comments at this time. Alderman Estes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Mr. Treeler some questions if I could.
You may, Mr. Treeler.
Kyle, thanks. This morning I received, I think all the council received a letter from you. In item 1, it just says that the access is consistent with the approved master plan that has been presented for every phase. Can you tell me then why the plat and the master plan are inconsistent? Why would you guys file a plat showing that non-access on that entire way if that wasn't consistent with your master plan?
When the plat was filed, and this was back in 2009, so this is before my time with Dream Design. So I'm speaking from what I understand and reading the meeting minutes and speaking with the engineers that were there. But the thought is that prior to allowing an access off, we would have a site plan prepared that showed traffic through the site. With that in mind, they went forward and platted the lot, running up against timelines and deadlines that, in accordance with some of the TIF plans that were going on at that time too.
You still have the floor.
Thank you.
Alderman Estes.
All right, okay, then the second one, it also says that the traffic plan, but item 3, I guess I have a question, if I could, for our city engineer, Dale Tech. And Dale, you didn't receive this letter, but I guess Mr. Treelor wrote us a letter in paragraph 3 says that the request is consistent with the minimum access approach clearances listed in figure 2.9 of the current infrastructure design manual. An access could be built within the proposed vacation area that meets the minimum clearances required for a full access according to the guidelines. And I think he's stating here that this is even needs to meet less of a reasonableness because it's a right in and right out. So I guess is this true? I guess I'm not familiar with the standards.
Mr. Tech.
I'd be happy to address that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The letter that was attached, the staff denial letter that was attached to the agenda states or refers to section 2.2 that states that an arterial street is designed with limited access to preserve capacity and enhance safety. It also identifies that it has to be built to AASHTO standards. The figure 2.9 that he refers to that shows the spacing, he had it in his PowerPoint presentation there, would be a case where we have a lot that's their only access. And we would check that to make sure that that lot met that requirement. This lot that he's referring to has, it borders 3 roads, Elkvale Road, Minnesota, and Marlin Drive. Elkvale is an expressway or an arterial road, and Minnesota is also an arterial road. Marlin, it has full access to. We would allow a full access to that. If you read the AASHTO criteria, which is not included in our infrastructure design criteria manual, it's a separate publication that the designers need to be looking at when they're designing arterial roadways, says that accesses such as this one that they're talking about should not be allowed in the functional area of an intersection. And in this case, the functional area of the intersection would be from Marlin Drive out to Elkvale Road. So it's the stretch that we're talking about. So I think what he's presenting in that his last point there is not valid. It is for what we would consider a single access lot, whereas our criteria is very specific that says you need to also look at the AASHTO requirements and plan your approaches accordingly.
Thank you. I yield for the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. The chair will now recognize Alderman Wright.
Excuse me. You said the lot length, the entire lot length is in the functional area of the intersection for Elkvale and back to whatever it is? That's correct?
The stretch of Minnesota Street from Marlin to Elkvale would be the functional area of the intersection, yes.
And how long is that?
It's not based on length, it's based on lane configuration, decision time for the driver. I can pull up the exhibit if you would like from AASHTO that shows what the functional area of the intersection, if that'd be helpful to you.
That'd be good. But how long, Kyle, how long is that lot along Minnesota? 500 feet, 200 feet?
500 feet. Approximately 500 feet.
I won't be able to bring it up. My laptop's dead, but.
Okay.
Certainly, I can attach that to the agenda for Monday night.
Mr. Tech, if you, and excuse me, Mr. Trillo, if you've got that PowerPoint slide that shows the length of that lot, I think that's what Alderman Wright is asking for. May we see that one more time? I don't remember the slide number, but it's
First one, isn't it? Second.
there. I believe that's the slide, the next one. I believe that's the slide that Alderman Wright is asking the question about the total length. First question.
400, nearly 600 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's approaching 600 feet.
A little less, actually.
Does that help you out, Mr. Wright?
If I could, Mr. Alderman Wright, I could illustrate on this drawing what the functional area of the intersection is. AASHTO defines it as the physical area of an intersection is just as what it says. It's right at the intersection. The functional area is the area that all vehicles moving towards this intersection, all the area that they need to be able to maneuver into these turning lanes, through lanes, and other turn lanes. And with decision time, it would be back through this intersection. Say a car parked here wanted to turn left up here and they were in the right lane back here. They need to be able to go through the intersection and move over into this left turn lane to be able to turn left. Therefore, AASHTO defines the functional area of the intersection, that limit right there.
May I ask another question?
You may.
AASHTO standards usually show some type of a distance for response and reply. This is basically open-ended?
If you read the AASHTO guidance, that's exactly what it is.
It's open-ended.
It's open-ended, yes.
If that turning lane was shorter, would that be different? Would it be interpreted different?
Potentially, yes.
But the question that I'm asking, thinking of, is the proposal that they have does meet our criteria but does not meet AASHTO criteria.
That is correct.
So does AASHTO rule on all of our decisions, or only on arterial, or only on?
Only on arterial and expressway roads. Our criteria is very specific about they need to meet AASHTO standards. On collectors, locals, lane place, it does not reference AASHTO requirements.
I've got to think about this one. Thank you.
Understand. Alderman Roberts, you have, before I get back to you, let me jump over to Alderwoman Scott. Or did you? Yeah, oh, you haven't? Okay, sorry. I thought you did. Alderman Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Kyle, can you answer a question for me real quick, please? Do you know what the traffic counts are now, how close it is to triggering that light?
They are, I just actually sent an email off to John Less, who was here but now is over at the DOT, and they just began the process of looking at those counts again. Really, it's immediate. It's awfully close to triggering that first signal on Elkvale and Minnesota. The Marlin count is, I think, a ways off.
Okay. Good. The reason I was asking is because with all the new apartments, I'm sure that it's just exploded lately. One more question. At the Marland intersection in Minnesota, currently there's a stop sign there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask Dale Tech a clarifying question, please?
You may. City Engineer Dale Tech.
Thank you. Jerry Wright's question to you was, which guidelines do we use for what roads? And I believe what you said was, our guidelines are used for non-arterial roads or non-highways, and the Astral is used for arterials and non-highways. But what I thought I heard you say in the middle of that, and that's what I'm calling you back up and asking, is do our city regulations refer to the Astral?
Yes, they do. If you read our criteria manual, It has requirements in there for all roadways, what the arterial road should look like, so on and so forth. But it does not contain all the detailed information, all the detailed design criteria that AASHTO does. So we refer to AASHTO saying, you not only need to follow our criteria, but you need to follow AASHTO's as well. And that's kind of where we're at with this, is we have a figure 2.9 that Kyle had on his PowerPoint there that says this is what the city criteria says for intersection spacing. It doesn't say anything about accesses though in our criteria, and that's where we're referring to the AASHTO criteria, is if you're designing it, you need to design your accesses per AASHTO.
So, and then this is my clarifying question then. So then, in reality, when Mr. Treloar was saying that we meet the city recommendations, we actually don't on this, because it has to meet both since it's an arterial road. Am I understanding that correctly, or is there some gray area in there?
There is some gray area there. The gray area, though, is the figure 2.9 that we have doesn't contemplate the AASHTO criteria. It just is, okay, if you have a lot that needs access here and it's its only access, this is the spacing it should be. Now, since we've got a lot that's got 3 frontages with one full movement availability on Marlin Drive, to me, then the AASHTO standard would take over.
Thank you.
You're
I yield
welcome.
the floor.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other lights at this point. The floor does not, or excuse me, the chair does not have a motion. Alderman Wright?
Just a question, Dale. What's that AASHTO standard again that we need to look at for this?
What is the AASHTO standard? It's in the Green Book, the 2011 edition. I think it's 9.2 is the section. And I'll get a PDF attached to the agenda for your review.
I make a motion to send it to council without action, without recommendation.
Motion made by Alderman Wright, second by Alderman Roberts. If the chair may ask a question of City Engineer Dale Tech, there's some additional information that you're willing to provide us, and could you restate that?
Yes, if I might, Mr. Chairman. I'd kind of like to refute something that Mr. Treloar said. He indicated that when the platting was done and the non-access easement was there, that it was left kind of open-ended, that it could be vacated. The transportation planner and the traffic engineer at the time were adamant in their comments that access be restricted here for the very reason that I bring up, that it does not meet AASHTO standards. It's in the middle of the functional area of the intersection, and future access shouldn't exist there either. So I disagree with his assessment. He wasn't there at the time. I was around at the time that this was platted, and I distinctly remember those conversations and the comments both the transportation planner and the traffic engineer at the time made.
As the committee knows, the chair prefers not to send any items to the council without recommendation. Is there any other additional information that this committee would like to see before we proceed with the motion? Is there any other information that you would like to see? Because I'm assuming there's some reasons why you're not willing to come forward with a recommendation. Alderman Wright.
Yeah, I want to look at the AASHTO standard, yes.
Okay.
I'm not satisfied until I read it.
The chair will recognize Public Works Director Terry Waltersdorf.
I was just going to add one additional quick comment. If over the next week before the council meeting, if you take a drive out there, I want you to think looking forward. Right now it's easy to drive out there and there's not a lot of traffic, but envision a Minnesota street that is a through street that reaches all the way over to Highway 44 and ultimately connects all the way over to Highway 79 or Campbell Street. It's a thoroughfare, fully developed area out there. School district has property out there for a school. So envision a fully built out arterial road 30, 40 years from now and the traffic that we'll see out there. I mean, that's what we are trying to protect today because it's easy to protect. We've got it protected. Once you give that away, you're going to pay dearly to acquire that access or that non-access easement back. Just talk to the DOT up on North La Crosse Street. Those are issues they're dealing with up along the interstate. So You have an opportunity now, as we did in 2009. We protected the access area there, and we're just here telling you, please look forward down the road, 30, 40 years, when potentially we have a substantial amount of traffic out there.
Thank you. Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did go out there this morning, and it is pretty quiet, and it looks pretty harmless today to me. I will admit that. And I'm a little conflicted because if they split this lot, there's a possibility that this could be their only access. But also coming to this meeting today, I live over in Founders Park, and I come up, merge up off of I-190, and I have to cross, I think, 3 or 4 lanes to get to a turn lane to come to this meeting, and it's a rodeo once in a while, and this could be that. But I guess I have a question, and I mean this very respectfully, and I have a lot of respect for everybody at the city, but the mayor brought in a guy to review second floor, and the whole theory was, what do we got to do to get to yes? And my question is as people that work for, I mean, we review things for developers and we work for the public, have we exhausted, I mean, have we looked at this, helped them, have we exhausted all avenues so that the customer, so that we can get the yes? And I guess that's the question, and I mean it with all due respect. Thanks.
Chair will recognize Alderman Wright.
I do have one question on the, called south side of Minnesota. Is the access easement also platted? Is it uniform on both sides of Minnesota?
There aren't any lots over there, are there? That area is not platted on the south side yet.
So at this point, it has no access easement control.
It has no access. It can't be legally transferred because it's not platted.
So potentially there could be a plat submitted that would meet what our criteria and be contested by AASHTO criteria if they come in for a plat within that same area? Or,
Yeah.
but
Staff's recommendation will be consistent to not have an approach in that functional area of that intersection and to provide a non-access easement.
okay.
You're welcome. Thank you for the discussion. The motion is to send to council without recommendation. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I'm going to vote no, because as the chair, I don't like to send items to the committee, from this committee, without recommendation. That's the only reason. The next item is item 24, a Rapid Transit Division Report from Rich Sagan. Mr. Sagan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the budgets that we're in control of over with Rapid Transit. We have the transit budget, which is $618, the Milo Barber Transportation Center, which is $840, and also the parking lot and area fund, which is account $870. I'll speak a little bit on the transit budget here. Our operating budget for 2014 is approximately $1.9 million. Of the $1.9 million, approximately 42% of the participation and share of the expenses are federal. The city's is about 34% projected. Farebox revenue is 2%. The state's in at about 1%. We presently have 28.25 FTEs, and broken down into bodies, that can vary somewhere between 40 and 42 people any one time. In 2013, we provided a little bit over 400,000 trips. We operate Monday through Saturday. We have the Rapid Ride, the Dial-A-Ride, the City View Trolley. Let's see. The federal government participates in the capital end of this in terms of rolling stock at an 85%, 15% share. The operations end of it's at a 50-50 proportion and an 80-20 for maintenance. So that's how you get the breakdown of the federal share being less than, the 50%, the city share less than 50%. We also have the Milo Barber Transportation Center. The budget there is approximately $80,000 a year. The FDA participates in 50% of the operating deficit costs there, which would be about 50% of approximately $68,000. We get about $12,000 in revenue from the 2 tenants that are in there. And in addition, the other budget we oversee is the parking lot and area fund, which is $586,000 in 2014. And we're responsible for the maintenance on the facility, snow removal, the parking lots, weed control, trees if we need to remove them, debris, cleanup, that type of thing. Answer complaints from individuals and kind of deal with the general public regarding things that take place over there. So it's kind of a brief review of what goes on over there. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Sagan. Just a couple for me is the federal funding that you folks get from Congress right now, and that the stalemate that's going on. Are you affected by that?
The latest conversation I've had with my FTA representative in Denver is that the possibility certain exists that the Highway Trust Fund and the transit fund of this thing could be broke by the end of September unless Congress acts on this. Presently, we are using $2013 for our operating and capital. We have not accessed $14 yet. Those only became available in April, so we would be anticipating applying for those grants soon. As far as FY15, which starts October 1st, it's anyone's guess at this time. I mean, these type of crises have happened in the past and Congress has acted, but we've really never had a Congress like this before either, so hard telling what's going to happen.
I understand. When would be the appropriate time to assemble or put together a Plan B in case that funding does not come through?
I'm real comfortable. The funding that we receive is good, the year of allocation plus 3 years out. I think we're really solid through middle of 2017 right now, 2016. So I really don't have any concerns at this point based on our annual expenditures that we're currently looking forward.
And the final question I have, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues here, is what is the turnover rate in your department?
Going back 3 years, we've had 2012, 13, and to date in 14, we've had 4 resignations. Of those 4 resignations, 2 were for relocation, 2 were for a better pay and a full-time job. We have a lot of 6-hour shifts, 7-hour shifts, so people obviously always want to try to get 80 hours of pay period if they can. So those were 2 individuals that did that. We had we've had 1 retirement, and that took place this year, and we had 2 terminations for probationary employees. And 1 was in 13 and 1 was in 14. So the turnover ratio was 3.5% in 12, 14% in 13, and it's 7% right now. And as I said, those in 13 were based on resignations and 1 termination.
Understand. And I guess I should follow up with the Condrey study that is affecting your department. Are we doing okay with the results off of that study?
I believe everybody's very happy with the study, yes.
Very good. Thank you. The chair will recognize Alderman Wright.
What issues do you foresee in your division that the council should be aware of at this time or near future?
It's a loaded question, Jerry.
I know.
I really don't see any specific...
This is our day of honesty.
I don't really see any specific issues, to be honest with you. I don't. Nothing that I would be concerned with at this point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the presentation. Not seeing any other lights. Chair will recognize a motion to acknowledge. Chair recognizes Alderman Roberts to make the motion and second by Alderman Estes. Any other points or questions? Not seeing any. Those in favor?
Don't move too fast. Don't move too fast.
I'm just getting acknowledged on this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm really vote for acknowledgement. I just have another question.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn. Before we adjourn, President would like to meet with members of the committee as to the committee assignments and so forth in the caucus room afterwards.
Okay. Thank you. Council President would like to meet with the committee after the meeting is adjourned. So the chair will entertain a motion by Alderman Roberts, seconded by Alderman Estes. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion. Thank you.